Oi! This is Kaiju Uncharted. We're a couple of siblings of the vast sea of anime. If you think this is a crew for you, set sail with us each week. I'm Jakia.
And Justin. So we're gonna keep these high dive hits going,
Okay.
and we're gonna discuss loner life in another world. And yeah, so as you
Do you want the
before you
synopsis?
read, yeah,
Go for it.
I was gonna say before you read the synopsis, you can say overall how you feel about the show, or you can just read the synopsis first and then.
Okay, I would say I'll tell you my thoughts about the show first. I was like, I don't know about this show. I was wrong about this show. I was so wrong. It went in a different direction. I'm so glad it did. It's something new. I'm also a little shocked that a lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people didn't like the show. It didn't get ranked very high on my anime list, which is interesting. Yeah, it's in the sixes, which is a little sad. I feel like that's kind of, but I was like, I thought this was a very good show about isekai. It was a different approach to isekai. So I appreciate that.
Okay.
But anywho, so those are my thoughts. Did you want to share your thoughts, or you want to share your thoughts after the synopsis?
We'll share after the synopsis.
Okay. And I will say, I didn't read the synopsis before watching the show.
Oh, so you just went in blind?
I just went in blind this time. So yeah. So high school student Haruka has always been a content loner. One day, he and his class are abruptly transported to another world and given skill points to use when choosing from an assortment of abilities and magical powers. Unfortunately, Haruka arrives last, and he can only use his points on the seemingly impractical abilities that others had no interest in. Although he is on his own again and might adjust to his new life by himself, he much prefers it that way. However, Haruka's peaceful solitude is short-lived. As he runs into some of his classmates, weak to their pleas for help, he ends up sheltering and helping them reunite with one another. But the different cliques struggle to see eye to eye, forcing Haruka to find a way to end the infighting and restore harmony between them to survive this unfamiliar world. So, yes.
Like you said.
Yeah.
I like this show because it was different.
Definitely different.
It starts off. Now, granted, I don't think we ever discussed Failure Frame. I love that show.
I don't think we have.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it is another show where the entire class gets summoned. Okay. And in this one, I just love the fact that he saw the writing on the wall.
Immediately.
He saw a summon circle. He's like, oh no.
He was like, at first he was like, oh, that's cool. And he was like, wait a minute, this is going to be a pain. And he was like, I got to get out of here. So he's like, first he was trying to like kick down the door. Everyone's freaking out. And then he's just like, you know what? I'm going to go up. So he went to the vent, through the vents, and he said, I won't be caught up here. It's not going to get me up here. But it did.
Yes, it did.
It totally did, which is why he arrived last.
And also, it seemed like the person who brought them was not very fond of him. Because it kind of came off like, just choose what you want. Like,
well, no, I was confused about the whole thing because I'm just like, why were we summoned here? And then I was like,
that is a better question.
And I feel like we never got it, and that's not okay. And then I also was confused because I was like, wait, did they just say he summoned 43 people? I said there aren't 43 people in this class. I said, were there other people in surround, or because they were just like, oh, this is his first summon of 43 people. I said, well, wait, was it like 43 people from this class and then some from other people, and this is what he missed in the orientation? Or two classes. Because I was like, hey, where's everybody else? I said, because it's not adding up to 43.
Right. And, we become, after we choose the leftover, at least we got to choose several.
But it's like we had skill points, which I do think is nice, because normally, like with these shows, isekai shows, it's like you got to choose one skill. And so this time you had to be like mindful of what skill points, how you're going to use your points. So I was like, okay, this is new, this is different. So I was okay with it. But I will say this. Don't underestimate Villager A, the set of Villager A, because even Haruka was like, yo, what kind of villager was this where they have everything?
And he had to prepare the belligerent ASAP.
Because he was just like, I'm gonna get this. And I also appreciate the timestamps that we got in this show, because it's just like, hey, this is where it is after a day. I love how he was tired of mushrooms after 1 day. Then we got to 5 days, and he's putting a lot of work.
It shows growth.
It shows growth, and we also didn't see the rest of the class yet until like the 5th day, which I was like, how big is this forest? What are y'all doing? And then I was like, I had some questions, but I was like, okay.
I like the different type of, I don't know if I would call it perception, but the back and forth on the artistic design. Like, the goblins seem like, it's like childlike graphics.
Yes.
And there's not to be disrespectful. I liked it how the animal, like the goblins looked a certain way, like the werewolves.
Oh, the kobolds.
Yeah, the kobolds, They looked more childlike.
And then when we got to the orcs, it was a whole nother story.
Yeah. But like you said, it takes a while. We're just living our life, trying to make, do the best we can in this other world.
He wants to live a peaceful life alone.
And then eventually we meet the nerds. And I was like, the fact that he calls the nerds is like, what's the dynamic here?
Yeah, I love the fact that he calls each clique their appropriate name. He said, y'all the nerds. He said, those are the Galu girls. He said, the delinquents. And then it's like everybody else.
The nerds give us the backstory. The nerds know the most about these isekai. So they went off and trained. They were able to. Everyone was supposed to be working together, but then we kind of find out the dynamic. They weren't really working together. It's just people tolerating or living amongst each other.
I mean, they were working together for 2 days, and after that second day, it was like, I'm not pitching up another tent. I'm not going to cook another meal. They're just like, I'm bored. And the nerds are like, if you're bored, do some work. And they're just like, no. And then, it was wild. It was wild. And then, like, how the nerds were like, hey, because we found out the delinquents had, like, 2 of them had, like, puppeteer. And
they started training.
Because they were just like, hey, they're going to try to use their skills on the class in inappropriate ways. And so then they
harm.
Right, and they immediately told
everybody.
Class rep, and like she was just like, no. And then the Galu girls were just like, gotta work, get out of here, to the delinquents.
They got banished.
They got banished by them, and I was like, oh, okay. I said that clique deserves their meal for that day, because they're just like, get out of here and don't come back.
And eventually, the delinquents returned.
And they set fire to the camp.
They destroyed the camp.
And I was just like, wow. I was like, who does that? It was crazy.
Now, technically, this is real delinquent behavior, so it makes sense that they did it.
I will say, in the backstory moments, I love how Haruka's at the bottom of the screen giving like commentary. He said, I just thought they looked like delinquents. I didn't think they would actually were delinquent in behavior. And the nerds are like, yeah. And I was like, that's crazy.
But eventually he parts ways with the nerds.
Right.
The nerds, they're on a quest.
Yeah, and they had level like 6, because that's the other thing. He saves them. Because he was like, at first he was like, wait a minute. He said, I'm going to help them out. And then he was like, let me check their stats first. And I said, true, that's how you do it. He said, they had 16, 19. He said, their lowest is 16. I'm at like, he was at levels, I think less than level 7. He was just like, I'm out. He said, they don't need me. He said, they're fine.
We're good there. They're good.
But then he saw a goblin sneak up on him. And then he was like, because he's able to defeat goblins in 1 hit now. But his level's still low. So I'm just like, I have questions about his stats, but that's okay. But yeah, so we learned from the nerds how like basically the class ends up breaking off into different groups. It all falls apart. The jocks go their own way. The Galu girls go their own way. The delinquents are banished. The nerds are gone. And I think there's like another, and then like some other people.
There's like another group.
Of like the others. It's just like, he said, the others that are kind of like me, but not. And I was like, okay. So that was interesting.
But it's like you said. We go ahead. We find out the gal group wants to apologize.
Oh, but he takes them to his house.
Well, I meant before that.
Oh, okay.
Because we just meet them and we like try to train them a little bit, but then we meet the class rep.
Well, no, I'm talking about we took the nerds to our lake.
Oh, yeah.
And they were just like, how'd you do this? He was just like, with all my skills. Because I only bring that up because, like, he, in addition to training, he's actually, like, using his skills in, like, practical.
He's training his own way.
He's training his own way. So the fact that he was able to build his house, at first, he's like, yeah, I got a bed, I got a kitchen, I got a table, like, I got, you know, I have cutlery, you know, dishes and things.
He made cups and bowls.
He said, y'all want something to drink? And they're just like, how did you do this? He said, it's only been 5 days. He said, well, what have y'all been doing? And that's why I'm just like, I love how he's accomplished so much by himself in 5 days. And everyone's like, how'd you do this? And he's just like, what have y'all been doing this entire time?
Right.
But yeah, like you're saying, he came across the all you girls because they want to apologize to the nerds.
And then eventually we meet also the class rep and the rest of the girls.
Right, because that's when we find out that the jocks left.
Right, that's
they abandoned them, and I was just like, man, this is crazy. I said, what happened to the rest of the class?
Listen, the jocks were on a mission to go after the delinquents.
Right, and we didn't know that, and I'm glad, and I was like, I love that part. I said high five to them because they were just like, we didn't find this out till later. He was like, no, we're going to stay in this forest to keep an eye on them. Because I was like, why are we still in this forest?
Tabs.
Yeah, because everyone's like, the nurse like, hey, we're going to go into town. I said, how you know there's a town?
There has to be.
There has to be a town.
But yes, the girls just wanted to go home. So we bring the girls back to our base. He finally gets to eat fish instead of just the mushrooms. And, you know, he starts to utilize his packing magic. And due to his packing magic, he's learning other people's talents or abilities, like lightning.
Yes.
And like you said, he trains... I don't know why, but he's the one training people. But
he was just like, wait, what level are y'all at? They're just like, oh, I'm at 30, or I'm at this. And he's like, y'all should be fine. Like, what are y'all doing? But didn't know how to fight.
Even though they apparently were stronger. Because, like, the Cabal, no... Again, I love the graphics.
Crazy.
They were just, like, taunting them, like, bring it on, because they won the first time.
Yeah, they're just like, it's time for our rematch, because they got destroyed by them the first time.
But the girls are now, like, level 23 to 16, so they clearly win the rematch.
Right.
All the while, Haruku is still 7.
Right.
Like you said, so it's like his level and skills are high, but his actual level... for some odd reason, is still
low.
Right.
And I was like, is this because he's master of none? But I was like, I don't think that's it. Or is it becoming... I don't know. I just had questions about that. Yeah, and so like the girls stay at his place. I love how in the short amount of time from the nerds coming to his home, it's transformed into a palace now in this short span of time. Now he got pillars. He got marble pillars. He got a bath. He has like a sauna like bath now. It's a whole thing. But he's like, hey, they're good to go and they can go into town. And then the class rep is like, yeah, we're gonna go into town, right? And he said, yeah, y'all gonna go into town. And she's like, yeah, we, including you, we're all gonna go to town. And then he's just like, so we're going to town.
Yeah, it's like, why though?
Right, he was just like, I'm just trying to live my life peacefully here. So yeah, so
and it's at this time we figure out the jocks are protecting the girls from the shadows.
Yes.
We also start to understand there is, I don't want to say a quest, but there's a meaning behind it. We find out that someone has the ability hijack.
Yes.
And if in the wrong hands, hijack can be used for evil.
Yes, because basically hijack is like you're able to steal the person's skill, but you have to kill that person. And so they're just like, ooh, the delinquents don't have it, or they would have bragged about it. And the jocks were just like, we can't trust anybody because we don't know who has it.
Yeah, because everyone thought the delinquents had it.
Right.
And kind of find out the class rep is the one who has it.
And I immediately was like, does she have it? And then the next scene it was like, she got it. And I was like, I knew it. And then I was still like, how are we still in the woods?
Well, eventually we make it out of the woods.
Well, no, I'm in the woods for like the delinquents. I'm just I was like, y'all don't have any aspirations of leaving the woods. I was like, okay.
Hey, they're planning stuff, okay? Like,
and I never trusted Tanaka. I was like, hey, I don't trust Tanaka. I was like, I just don't trust him.
Was it the glasses?
Well, no, I didn't trust him because I didn't trust him because I also got confused by that one scene because it made it look like he was being chased by somebody originally. He got choked out, and I was like, I don't trust this kid anyway because I was like, why would you side with the delinquents out of everybody?
He's been pressured.
I don't even think so because
it's a perfect setup.
I was like, there's something here. I was like, I just don't trust him. And then we come to find out it's Tanaka. Tanaka's the one who is taking people out to find Hijack because he wants that skill Hijack. We basically end up. Well, I guess I'm jumping. Yeah, I'm jumping in. That's fine. But no, we get to town. We make it to town. The girls are happy being in town and stuff. And then
they're about to get jobs.
Yeah, we're gonna be like, they're decided to become adventurers. Everyone signed up. They're just like, oh my gosh, thank goodness we were able to become adventurers. And I was like, why wouldn't you? And then in the next scene, they're just like, oh, tonight, like Haruka, it's your turn to go sign up to be an adventurer. He was like, you're right. I'm waiting for my money to be like dispersed or exchanged. Sure. And he was like, I'm ready. And then she's like, no. You have to be at least at level 10 and you have to have a party to become an adventurer. And then she's like, if you're going to be solo, you got to at least be level 20 or 30. And he was just like, so there's no hope for me? And I was like, literally the guild master thanked him for the job that he just did.
Right.
I was like, this should be enough to grant him permission to be an adventurer.
Sometimes people don't wield their power. You know, it doesn't make sense.
I was like, what's going on here? I was like, he's strong enough to like do these side quests for y'all, but not enough to get an actual, to actually become an adventurer, have his license. So then I got even more annoyed because they're just like, Haruka, you can't leave. They were like, you can't leave town without a permit. I said, we came from out.
Yeah, like we're not of this town.
We're not of this town. We're not of this world.
Technically, we're going home.
Right, we're going because he has a whole house, and I was just like, well, if these people don't let him go home, I was so annoyed. And then class rep is like, where are you going? You can't leave. And he said, I just came from. We all just came from here.
You were here.
She said it's dangerous. He was like, we just came.
I love that. Like it's dangerous. He trained y'all.
Right.
None of this makes sense.
Right. And then they're all just like, all right, we're going out to level up some more. I was like, cool. So he's supposed to stay here and watch y'all level up by the day, get all these crystals and all this money while he's just waiting. I said, in what world does this make any kind of sense? It was crazy. It
makes no sense. He does eventually sneak out of town.
Yes. He was like, I should have did this earlier because he had the invisibility cloak. And it was funny where
What's the high jump?
Right. He's just like, why didn't I do this sooner? So then he leaves town and then he sees like, oh.
No.
He's like, oh, okay. I remember how people saying like, oh, it's dangerous to leave town. He said, oh, I guess there was a village there at one point. And I was like, did we not notice this before? And then keeps going some more. And then he's just like, oh, there's a field of goblins and they're waving. He's just like, that's none of my business.
He said, whatever. They're clearly planning and plotting.
Yeah, he said that's none of my business. He said it's not a problem. I said, right. Then it keeps going some more. So we keep seeing all these things.
Right, he's here to destroy town. He's like, whatever.
Then he's like, oh no. He said, oh man, there's a carriage. And he's just like, nah, I shouldn't get involved in that. That's not my business.
He sees the bandits attacking it. And the bandits say, they go and say, all witnesses must die. I'm like, oh gosh.
And he's just like, and now he's just like, well, maybe this just became my business. And then And
then of course, the carriage being attacked happens to be the daughter of the city, Umi or Umiyu, whatever the city's called. So I know I'm jumping a bit, but I love the fact like down the road, just the next episode, but he was like, once we get free, because our reward is money as well as an ID to just come and go. Like, who cares? We could leave whenever we want.
Right.
But he goes ahead. He's like, all right, he's like, I'm free. And he says, if there's any other carriages in trouble, I'm not looking.
At all. He said, it's none of my business. He said, I'm not looking. He said, I don't care. He's just like, that's what happened. And I was like, wow. I said, he's right.
At the end of the episode, when he saved the daughter, we finally get the showdown we've been waiting for. Delinquents versus jocks. They finally make a move.
They finally make a move in the forest. It is 4 against 4. And I was like, wait a minute, someone's missing. Yep. And so the jocks are going at it because they're just like, we're ready. And they're just like, and then all of a sudden, one of the delinquents gets stabbed by somebody in a cloak. And I was like, okay, it's one of ours. And then we come to find out, and this person just taking out all the delinquents. And then I was like, oh, well, leave the jocks alone. I said, they haven't done anything. Right. And then they were just like, the jocks were like, let's run for it. Like, we don't even need to stay. Like, let's just go.
Has nothing to do with it. Yeah,
has nothing to do with them. And then they learn who it is.
They go by the student killer for now. But yes, it's like, we got to figure this out. And again, the woods are our home. We are of the woods.
I know we're of the I'm just saying, like, the delinquents didn't have any of the aspirations.
Oh, no. I'm talking about Haruka now. Yeah. Because once we get our paths and stuff, he's like, something's different about the woods. And then he sees, like, a lot of blood. And then we also run into the jock. I'm like, oh my God, no. He got the jocks. Yeah. But we figure out it's Tanaka, the math genius. Yes. And now there's a fight. And I was like, what's going on?
Because the jocks were like, hey, because I took me a minute. I said, wait, they're like, oh, we came here to your house. And I was like, how does everyone know where we live? But I was
it's quite large.
I was like, that's fine. And they're just like, oh, we knew if we came here, the person would come thinking that it was like, that we went to get help from the class rep. But they're like, no, we're going to bring them to you. And he's just like, y'all brought this to my doorstep. Got it.
Well, at that point, they thought he was the strongest.
They did. And then they're just like, we can help you. And he said, nah, I'm gonna handle this solo. Y'all just go back to town. But I was like, they've never been to town, so they don't even know where town is. But I was like, it's fine. So then, Tanaka's waiting. Haruku's waiting for, basically for Tanaka to come.
Yeah, and we find out Tanaka's skill is copycat.
Yes.
And his plan is to copycat hijack until he can kill the class rep and get the real thing. Yep. And he only can lose copycat 3 times.
Yes. Because everyone was like, no, he has a crazy weapon skill thing. And then Haruka's like, I see what happened here.
He figured it out.
He said, that wasn't on the list. I will say, I appreciate all the people who paid attention and memorized the skill list. Because they're just like, wait a minute. That wasn't on the list.
And per usual, which seems to have been like the running theme. I don't even want to say, because clearly Loner Life is from a prior season. But the running theme, it seems like the last year and a half, has been Dungeon Stampedes. So there's also a Dungeon Stampede in this show. Yes. We also have to remember Haruka skills also went to luck. And his luck is ridiculous.
Because I think that was the best decision, to be honest. Like, if your stats are really, really low, because he was like, M. He said, what does M mean? He said, better not mean finance. He said, I don't know a lot, but I know enough. And he said, I'm a maxed out. My luck. So, yeah. Yeah, so there's a stampede. But I like the build up to this stampede in the sense of, like, they had the ways. They're just like, wait a minute. They're just like making all the deductions, like the lord of the town, like, you know what? I think we're going to have a stampede that happens next because we're having all these monsters that are starting to come out. Right. They're just setting up the thing. And then we also learn more about the dungeon. And then, like, we got a real dungeon, has like 100 floors.
Right. We're supposed to go there, try to resolve it. Right. Again, Haruka and his luck. He ends up falling all the way through the dungeon wall.
Well, before that, I think this is hilarious because, like, so he's leaving. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go ahead to the dungeon," and because I love the shopkeeper that deals all the powerful dungeon items and stuff because they just have like a weird report. But he was just like, "Hey, he's like, I'm not selling you nothing," and he was like, "I don't want to buy nothing. I need information." And so he was like, tell me about what's in this. Because he's like, the nerds are talking about this, like, rare item. what is it? He said, oh, you mean the pheromone ring? He said, that's probably like after like the 50th floor or whatever. And then we see the nerds in the background listening, because now we know that people are tailing Haruka because he's always going out. So you know what they do? They immediately tell the class rep on him. And so now it's like the class rep, the girls, the jocks, and the nerds are all like, they're like, oh, we gotta go stop him. So he's like happy, merrily going down the way, because it's the change in the graphics. He's like, all right, I'm gonna go do this and have a good time. And he's like, wait, there's a presence. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's the stampede. And then no, it was the class. And they're just like, where are you going? And he's just like, I'm not going anywhere. And then they start chasing after him. And then he gets to the dungeon. The dungeon guard's like, hey, you can't go in there. There's gonna be a stampede. Like, it's pretty dangerous. And then he's like, I don't care. And he was like, all right. And then the class,
it was like, no, we're going. Hey.
No, and then the class is like, he's like, hey guys, you guys don't want to go in there. And they're like, we're showing them their adventure licenses. And he was just like, he's like, fine, whatever. So the class is just running after him. They're like, it's dangerous. And he's just like, stop following me. And then he falls, and he's like, I got great luck, so I'll be fine. And then he falls through the wall.
Yes.
And just his luck, he ends up going down to the furthest floor. He goes to the bottom.
It's worse than a robbery.
He goes to the bottom of the bottom.
He goes to the secret last floor, which is floor 101.
Yes.
Where the Dungeon Emperor is.
Yes.
And that's when we find out, like, miasma. Some good old miasma.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't use it that often, right. But I would say this show...
It's slept on.
It is. I feel like Perry everything mentions miasma, so, it's like more miasma moments.
Yeah. I mess with it. Miasma is controlling the Emperor.
Yeah.
Her name is Angelica.
Yes.
And
you have a good old throwdown.
We eventually win, and now we're teaming up so that we can make our way back up.
And then I was like, oh my gosh, we can have a party now. And I said, because now he's at level 11 from his fight with Tanaka. And Tanaka was like, I used death on you. It should have worked. For anyone over level 11. And I was like, well, he's at 11. That's why it didn't work. But yeah, so they make their way back up. And then the class is actually like making their way down to get to them, because he's just like, he saved us all this time. It's the least we can do. And they're like, yeah. And they finally... I
just love that Angelica and her crew are like slowly coming up the stairs, and they're having to go through each boss room. And they're like, and I'm like, he should be leveling up. I'm like,
that's what I'm saying. I was like, where are we level wise?
Right, because I was like, we had to fight the floor boss 100, then floor boss 99. I'm like, What are we doing?
What are we doing? I said, if we were not at level 30, I'm gonna be very disappointed. Because I said that's the bare minimum for him to go out in the world. And I was like, if he defeated the Dungeon Emperor, he has to be at least up some levels.
Right.
So yeah, like you said,
and a secret boss no less.
Right, and then we're also fighting. Like you said, we're coming from the back, so we're having to fight each boss.
I also love the fact where something getting backwards, because when we got to floor 94, the boss was level 100. So I was just like, what is this about?
Right.
So yeah, and then as the class is trying to come down, the stampede is happening.
Yeah.
Like hordes of them are starting to come up. They got things.
The town is like, oh no. And then the guild master's like, ain't those kids in the dungeon? No, it was Orphan, and who was telling the guild master, he was like, hey, he said, aren't those kids in the dungeon? The guild master's like, no, you shouldn't have those kids defeated. He said, they'll be fine. He said they can handle it.
I thought, didn't they switch over to a scene because he was just like, no, they shouldn't be, and they showed that one guard, and he's like, who's just letting everybody through? So they don't even know.
They don't even know. But I love how that was his first thought. He said, aren't they over there? And like the lord of the town is like evacuated everybody into one room, and it's just like, so the town is like, basically in panic for the stampede. And those kids are like on level, they're on floor 90 and stuff.
They're like slowly clearing the waves.
Clearing the waves, yeah. And all in one day, might I add.
Right.
They're really like handling business in this short amount of time.
And then eventually it's like up to him and Angelica. They stop the third wave when they're finally out.
Yeah.
On episode 11. And then I don't know. Like based off of this show, it kind of seemed like because like episode 12, like she finally spoke. Or also like as we were constantly going up the floors, she started to get her human form back.
Yes.
When she was just skull and bones.
Right.
I'm like, is this a curse? Is this? I didn't know what to make of it.
I was so confused about like how did you get controlled by the miasma moment, and I was just like, because at first I was like, is there something else that we have to defeat? Because like the Lord was talking about like besides the stampede, he said no, something bigger is coming. And I was like, well, what else is coming in the world? And I was like, is this turning on to their reason why all these kids were summoned here in the first place?
Right.
And I was like, I need more of that information. And then, oh man, I lost my train of thought that fast. Oh man, that's okay. But,
I don't know if this helps. She's human now. She finally spoke. I don't know if that helps. We got, Haruka throws out like, I don't want to say a life lesson, but words of wisdom.
Yes.
Everyone's a loner in some way.
In some kind of way. And I love how he's just like, he said, and I love how throughout the entire time he kept reuniting with his class, he was just like, they're like, come on, you come with us. He's like, nah, I'm going to go ahead and do this on my own. And even at the end, he's just like, they're like waiting for him in the town, and he's just like, "Nah, I'm gonna go back to our home in the forest."
Yeah,
like,
him and Angelica are like, we're good.
Yeah, we're good, and they're gonna do their own thing. And then he's also letting Angelica do her thing with the girls at the end. And I was like, "That's great."
It's also been 44 days.
It has. It's been a short amount of time, and I had one thing. I was like, "Man, this class is cold blooded," because like some of their classmates have died, and they have not mourned or asked their question about it.
Now, granted, maybe they're under the perception. When you die, you go back to the room.
Who knows?
Right.
I mean, but it wasn't spoken of. It wasn't mentioned. And then also, I'm wondering, I'm like, was that everyone in our class? Because I feel like there are some people in our class that we didn't get.
Sure.
And I'm just like, well, did they already pass this down? Because the Lord of Oimi was like, hey, we're a frontier town. And I was just like, well, what does that mean? I was like, and so I'm just like, remember, this is only one town.
Right.
This is the first town. Meaning there are other towns and other things that we have to do. So I don't know. So I'm intrigued by the show. I enjoyed the show.
Like the way it ended, if it's done, I can see it. If it's not done, I can see it.
Absolutely. Because if it's not done, they have every direction that they can go. They literally have every direction.
There's like 21 kids not accounted for. If 43 were summoned.
Because if this is all of our class, what about the other class?
And even then, we might be generous. Like there were 3 of the gal girls.
Yeah.
4 nerds.
4 jocks.
4 jocks.
4 delinquents. 4 delinquents, and then Tanaka.
4 delinquents. All right, so 12, and then the gal girls would be 15. Then we have Tanaka. Then we got the one person who Tanaka killed.
Right.
So that's all right.
Because that person was like a no-name.
Yeah, we don't even know. And then I'm trying to think of all the girls. Class rep. The one who fished.
Yeah, you got the one who's always hot with the green hair.
Right, and she had a buddy with her all the time.
That's true.
I think maybe like give or take like 5 or 6 girls.
I think there might have been 7. I think there might have been 7.
So like we might be barely.
Because we even had that one girl who had the glasses but never said nothing.
So easily like 20 people are not accounted for, and 43 or something.
Right. So I'm just like, who, where are they? What's going on? Is Haruka gonna forever stay in the woods? Which is fine. That's our home.
That's okay.
That's totally fine. Because like he has the subjugate skill that he can definitely train some monsters and some beasts.
And then I kind of remember, did the class rep come with Angelica back to the home after they hung out, or they still hung out in the town?
So like at the end, Angelica ended up staying in the town with the girls,
right? Because
he was like, no, because that's why he was telling the class rep like, hey, I'm relying on you to like take care of her and stuff. Right. I think like. Yeah, so I feel like they'll still engage and stuff. I think that town is home base for now. And I think once everybody comes to the shared understanding, like, hey, let's move to another town, then they'll do like another home base thing. I love how Haruka immediately abandoned his school uniform. He said, I'm of this world now.
Yes.
And everyone else has their uniforms. He's just like, I'm of this. He said, I'm of this world. So
yes, this all makes sense.
This all makes so it's totally fine. But yeah, so I enjoyed the show. I'm surprised like a lot of people didn't like it. I thought it was definitely different. Definitely need more answers. Why were we brought here? I just need to know because I think that I'm like 43 people is a lot. Especially if they didn't mention anything about heroes in this world. They didn't mention anything about demon lords in this world. So I'm just like, why are we really here? Because that's usually the classic reason as to why people are brought.
Yeah, especially if this like maths. Because it's like, why is this summoning needed?
Right, because normally, like, Shield Hero, like,
it's like 3 or 4.
Something. And Shield Hero brings us to understanding, like, hey, they can summon other people because they got different types of heroes and other things. But I was like, there's no information here whatsoever. And I was like, I need more information.
But it's a good show.
It's a good show.
People didn't care.
I am too, but that's their loss. But it's a good show. So we definitely recommend Loner Life in Another World. It's a good show. Definitely a good show. So yeah, let us know if you've watched it. Let us know what you think. And that's this week's episode of Kaiser Uncharted.